All right, so here we are in front of VCV Rack, and this is system number one. If you don't know what system number one is and what's the story behind it, I'll leave a link right in here that'll tell you everything you need to know. But in a nutshell, I've wanted to limit us to a fixed system, just like in real life, you have like a fixed Eurorack system, right? And this system will be our starting point. So every future tutorial for I don't know how much time basically, we'll be using this fixed system. And we can change it the way we like, but we shouldn't exceed the, I think it was 84 HPs in here. But yeah, point being is that it's a fixed system, just like the real thing, basically. So as mentioned in this tutorial, I wanted to focus on what we can do basically with the oscillators. The patches that we're going to create are really simple and will really focus on what the oscillators are capable of doing. So this will basically give you an idea of why I chose these oscillators. For the patches of this tutorial, I'll be avoiding the Instrio C shell. I've already made a full tutorial about it, so you can check it right in here. But for this tutorial, I've wanted to focus on the digital oscillators, basically. So we'll be starting with the Terrorform, which is basically a wavetable synthesizer that can mangle the wavetable in some really interesting ways. You see in here, we have basically, this is the wavetable selector in here, and these are basically the mangling algorithms. I've also made a full overview about it. I'll leave it right in here, but for now, let's start patching and see what we can do with it. So first thing first, we'll send the volt per octave, which is basically the pitch output from the MIDI to CV module in here to Terrorform, so it'll follow the pitch I'm sending to it. And we will send its output to the VCA in here. We'll control the VCA with the gate, and the output of the VCA will go to our final mixer, which will go basically to the DAW. So now we have this. Nothing too special. Now let's make things interesting. So first things first, let's go to the wavetables in here, and we will choose a wavetable called sine harmonics. So we have this. So because this is Psytrance, let's sample and hold, or basically random modulate the wave position here. For that, I'll be using the sample and hold module that we have in here. But first, let's right click in here and make sure that the normal range in here is from 0 to 5 volts. I don't want it to exceed 5 volts. So let's take its output, modulate basically the wavetable position in here, and we will clock the sample and hold because we need to clock it, we will clock it with the gate. And now I'll turn on a random arpeggiator. I'm using my own clone of Autoplay by Altar of Wisdom or Rhythmizer by Futurephonic. So let's turn it on, and now we have this. Now let's make things interesting and start playing with the bend algorithm in here. As you can see, we have a lot of algorithms to play with, but I'll be playing with the first one, the bend one. So for that, I'll take the second output of this sample and hold module. So we have basically 2 sample and hold modules in one. So I'll take the second output, I'll send it to the shaper depth in here. I'll take it down a little bit. And what I'll do, I'll set this second sample and hold module to invert. Basically, this sample and hold module is really interesting because when you gate one of these sample and hold modules, both of them will be gated unless you route a new trigger to the second module, basically, right? So this gate is gating both of these modules, but I want the second one to be inverted. So just to make things more interesting, basically, So now we have this modulation. Let's now make things move a bit more, right? So what I'll do, we have an LFO in here, right? It has 4 outputs. Each one of them has a different phase from the other one. We'll use just one output. I'll take it and I'll make it modulate the pitch of the oscillator, right? Let's take the modulation a little bit down. Let's set the LFO in here to something really slow. Let's set it to triangle. And now we have this. I want it to move a bit more. So what I'll do, this LFO rate in here, I've set it to the minimum possible, right? It's like 0.06 hertz, something like that. And I'll modulate the volt per octave, or basically the pitch of this LFO, with the sample and hold module in here. The first one, not the inverted one, the classic one. So now we have this. Now we're getting some really interesting results, but as you can hear, the VCA is opening and closing with the gate, so it's, first of all, really clicky and not that interesting. I want it to become, a bit more interesting. So what I'll do in here, this oscillator has a low-pass gate that we can access by left-clicking, like a long click on this kind of LED in here, and then we will set it to the blue color, which is VCA plus VCF, and this means it's on low-pass gate mode. A low-pass gate is basically a VCA and a low-pass filter. You cannot control the frequency of the filter because it just opens and closes with the VCA. It gives a really nice plucky feeling. I really love it for that. So what we will do, we will gate this low-pass gate in here with the gate from the DAW, and let's turn it off. Let's set it to trigger mode, and let's close the decay a little bit. And now we have this. See, now if you play with the decay, we can get a groove going on. And this is exactly what we're doing. We will send a modulation from the sample and hold module in here, the inverted one, to modulate the decay. Now let's set the modulation to negative, basically, and now we have this. Just give it a slower attack, just to make it smoother, basically. Now we're getting some really interesting results, but I want to make it really psychedelic, right? And the easiest way to do it is by using a delay. So what I'll do in here, let's just take the dry and wet knob to 0 for now, so we won't hear any delay. Let's send our output in here, from the VCA, or basically from the oscillator, to the delay. I kept the VCA in here just so we can use it as some sort of a volume knob, basically, because if you think of it, a VCA is you can use it as a volume knob, or like as an amount knob for a modulation or for volume or for, just an amount knob, basically. Anyhow, let's send the delay to the mixer in here. So let's take a cable. We have left, we have right in here. So now we'll have this. Pretty interesting. Let's take down the feedback. Let's set the delay to really fast, somewhere in here. Now we have this. Now let's modulate the timing of the delay. So the first one, and here the left channel will be modulated by the first sample and hold module, and the right channel will be modulated by the second sample and hold module. And we will modulate it just a tiny bit, like this, right? And we'll set the mode in here to crossfading instead of resampling. It'll give us cleaner results. And in this case, with the modulation, I feel it sounds better. Now let's give it some feedback, and we have this. We can make things go crazy in the stereo field by setting the delay to ping pong. Now we have this. Pretty interesting and really psychedelic. And now with the kick and bass, we'll have this. you can do so much with this oscillator all alone. Like you can just, like I did now, play with the chorus pitch, play with the wavetable position, because as you can see, the sample and hold modulation, we're sending the wavetable position in here, doesn't cover the full range of the wavetable, right? So you still have like some space to play with it manually and send like automations and go really crazy with it. Yeah, as you can see, one patch, just oscillator and a delay, and that's pretty much it, you know? Now, that was the Terrorform patch. Let's move on to the Braids patch and see what we can do with it. All right, so back to a blank system number 1 in VCV rack. And now we're going to focus on the micro oscillator or Braids. And basically, why I love this oscillator, I mean, I know that Mutable Instruments basically made plates, and plates is available inside of VCV rack for free. But the thing is, personally, as a Psytrance producer, I feel that the micro oscillator or Braids basically has more interesting algorithms to play with for Psytrance, right? And a really good example of that, the algorithm that we're going to use today. So instead of going, the old school way like this, we're going to just right click anywhere on the oscillator. We'll go to the model in here and we will use the ZLPF, low pass filtered waveform, right? So first of all, we'll send it to a VCA as the usual. We'll control the VCA with the gate in here. We'll send it to the mixer or our output, and now we have this. Let's take it like an octave lower. Now I have this. See this acidic kind of character to it? Now let's send the volt per octave from the DAW to the oscillator, basically the pitch. Now we have this. And as you guessed it, we're going to randomly modulate the timbre. So what I'll do, I'll close it, because you heard over here, there was basically no sound. So I'll set it to the stage where it's right before where there is no sound, basically. So we'll set it somewhere in here. Perfect. And with the same famous sample and hold module, we will modulate the timbre in here. For sure, right click, make sure we're in 0 to 5 volts. Basically, a really nice range of a unipolar modulation. Like we can set it to 10 volts, but we don't need that much of a modulation, especially in this example. So let's get the sample on hold with the MIDI. And now with a random arpeggiator, we'll have this. Pretty interesting. Now let's modulate the color a little bit. For that, I'll use the 4FO in here, basically, or LFO. Let's take its output, set it to the color in here, set it to something slow, and for sure, triangle wave. Man, I love triangle waves. You can feel how the sound is moving now, right? Now things are getting really interesting and like moving. I like that. So what we will do now, as you can feel, the sound has a lot of higher frequencies in here, right? So we can control the higher frequencies with a filter. Now I know I said that we're going to only use the oscillators in these examples, but I feel we can benefit from a low pass filter in here. Like we're not doing anything crazy with the filters and like really using their character. We're just controlling the high end, right? Like we can control it with the modulation knob in here, but I feel that we will lose a lot of really nice sweet spots that we can just attenuate with the filters that we will basically use like as some sort of a low pass gate like we did with the Terrorform patch, right? So what I'll do, I'll just send it in here and we'll take the 2 poles output back to the VCA, we'll close it, and we'll open the filter in here with the envelope, just like this. We'll get the envelope with the gate coming from the DAW, basically. Now, if I close the decay, we'll have this. Pretty interesting. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'll use the second envelope in here. I'll gate it with the gate coming from the DAW to actually open and close this VCA. Like this. So we'll get like a really nice plucky kind of patch. So let's close it a little bit. Now we have this. Let's give it some release. Slower attack for actually both envelopes. And what I'll do, I'll modulate the decay in here with the sample and hold module that we have in here, right? So now we have this. Now to make things interesting, I'll use the LFO in here to modulate the decay of the second envelope, the one modulating the filter, right? But to make things a bit more interesting, I'm going to take another output in here which has a phase 270 degrees different from the output that we have in here modulating the color, right? And I'll make it modulate the decay. But this output is bipolar. Check this out. So I want to make it unipolar. And to do that, we have a module in here called the dual attenuator, right? So if I'll send it to the dual attenuator, crank it all the way up. See, we're still bipolar, but we can actually offset it. I'll offset it by a factor of 5 volts. Now check this out. We have basically a unipolar modulation. So let's send the output of the dual attenuator to the decay input in here. And we also have now basically a dry and wet knob or an amount knob for the modulation. So let's set it to something like this. Now we have this. Now we're getting things moving in a really nice way in this patch. So to finish it off, I'm going to send it to the delay, but I'll do something really interesting with the delay this time. So first of all, let's send it to the delay. Let's turn down the delay, set it to 100% dry, send the left channel in here to the left input, the right channel to the right input. So basically, if I'll set it to something really fast, now we have this. Pretty psychedelic. But what I'll do in here, check this out. I'll use the second sample and hold module to modulate the timing of the left and the right channel of the delay, right? So let's just do so. But this, all right, this is the wrong output. Now we're having the good one. But I don't want to gate the sample and hold module with the other one, basically with every new coming note, right? I want to gate it if, let's say, it's 1 on 4 of our BPM, right? So this project is at 149. So what I'm going to do, I'll gate it from this clock in here, right? So I'll send basically the first clock that we have in here. And this clock, I'll set it to a ratio of basically divided by 4. And I'll set a click in here. Basically, it's clock output to the BPM that we have. And now if I'll hit play, you can see that we are at 149 BPM. And our clock output in here is basically divided by 4. So now we can modulate the delay just a tiny bit, like this. I'm going to inverse the modulation. We'll set it to ping pong and to crossfading mode. Now we have this. Now for sure we can make things a bit more interesting by playing with the chorus pitch in here. Check this out. We can do so with the 4FO in here. Let's take one of the phases in here, send it to the FM input, crank that FM modulation knob, and now we have this. And now with the kick and bass, we'll get this. so psychedelic and yet so simple because, again, everything is done via the oscillator. I know I've added some movement here and there, with the filter, but essentially everything is coming from the oscillator. And yeah, with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. I really hope you've learned something new. This patch is going to be available for my Patreon, and if you would like the system number 1, you can find it on my Gumroad. It's free for download. See you next time.